Okay, howdy fellow tax nerds. Welcome to Deep in the Heart of Taxes, the only show that takes the time to boil down all of the tax law news that's fit to share, and some that isn't, all so that you don't have to. I'm your host, Jack Manhire. Before we get to the headlines, remember all of the links to the full stories are in the description section below the video. Here are your headlines. From Paul Caron's Tax Prof blog. A virtual memorial service today celebrating the life of Michael Lang from Chapman. From Paul Caron's blog. It is with great sadness that we report Chapman University Fowler School of Law professor Michael Lang passed away on June 28th due to complications from a recent stroke. A faculty member since 2002, Professor Lang was the founding director of the law school's tax LLM program and taught such courses as federal income taxation, ethics and tax practice, and corporate taxation. Prior to joining Chapman, he taught at 9 different law schools over the course of his career, including 19 years at the University of Maine School of Law, where he also served for a time as Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. Before entering the Legal Academy, Professor Lang practiced law at the global law firm of Morgan Lewis. He received his BA from Harvard University and his JD from the University of Pennsylvania Law School, where he was a member of the Order of the Coif. A virtual memorial service for Professor Lang, hosted by the Fowler School of Law, will be held via Zoom on Friday, which is today, at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Michael Lang, September 17th, 1951 to June 28th, 2020. Godspeed, Michael. We'll miss you. From FreightWaves, Missouri trucking company owner pleads guilty to tax evasion. July 7th, 2020, a Jefferson City, Missouri trucking company owner faces up to 5 years in prison without parole for failing to pay taxes on more than $600,000 in income over 3 years. Owner-operator Ryan Fegley pleaded guilty Tuesday in federal court in Missouri to 1 count of tax evasion. Fegley, 39 years old, ran Phoenix Freight Lines Incorporated from 2010 to 2014. Phoenix leased trucks, hired drivers, and obtained freight contracts. The obligatory statement from the DOJ talks about how this is, serving justice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have to say, I've noticed since November of 2019, so less than a year ago, 5 criminal convictions, whether they be pleas or others, for owner-operators or trucking company truck company owners. I have to look into this, but I'm not sure if this is a record trend or if this is normal. Now, back when I was practicing and I did civil defense, I had a lot of owner-operators. A lot of owner-operators who, this was the typical situation. They didn't file their tax returns for a number of years. As owner-operators, they had huge amounts of gross income, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. But because they didn't file the returns, the IRS just filed an SFR for them on the 1099 income, on the gross income. And so they had really large tax liabilities. And the best way to fix it was to have them file their tax returns, because when you boiled it down after their costs for fuel, for labor, et cetera, they were pulling in maybe $30,000 a year. Okay. So I've seen that a number of times in practice, but the criminal convictions, very, very interesting. I wonder if this is a trend. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I appreciate knowing what you know, if you have an opinion or if you have any information on this. And lastly, for today, we know that the Supreme Court handed down its decision yesterday morning. That would be Thursday. A somewhat split decision that sided with the New York State prosecutor that were seeking President Trump's tax returns and financial records, and at the same time declined to grant Congress access to records subpoenaed by a trio of Democratic-led House committees. In a 7-2 vote, We know this already. What's interesting in an article by The Hill, and again, the links to this are in the description below, is that it talks about the fact that President Trump's tax returns are under audit. This reminds me of something I overheard last weekend. I was out on my back porch, and I could hear my neighbors. They were in their backyard talking. There were about 4 of them, and they were saying something to this effect. The president's returns are under audit. Every president every year gets audited, and so that's why they were able to make their returns public. Why doesn't the IRS just make President Trump's returns public, since he's under audit as well? All right, this is clearly a misunderstanding of fundamental tax law. Most of my audience knows this already, but in case somebody's listening who might not be as steeped in this, the president's auditing of the president and the vice president's tax returns, there are special procedures for that within the IRS's manual, okay? Just because somebody's tax return is audited by the IRS does not make that tax return public knowledge. In fact, there's a whole section of the Internal Revenue Code, Section 6103, which makes it, which forbids the disclosure of a federal tax return by the IRS or an employee thereof. Now, certainly, the taxpayer can make a voluntary disclosure of his or her tax return. However, I want to clear this up, just because the IRS audits a tax return, even audits the president's tax return under the special procedures for doing so, it does not make that tax return public. Okay, so for my neighbors, if you're listening, or anybody who's thinking like my neighbors and following that particular logic stream, the logic isn't faulty, but the premise is. It does not make it public just because the IRS is auditing the return. And just to wrap things up, let's go over a few of the news items from the IRS Newsroom for this week. The IRS is reminding everybody that contributions to a traditional individual retirement arrangement, an IRA, that is made by the July 15th, 2020 day, and that's the postponed tax return date, those are deductible on your 2019 tax return. Typically, the contributions made up to the tax return date of April 15th are allowed on that year's tax return, but because the tax filing date has been pushed out to July 15th, the contribution date has also been pushed out. Also, the IRS has issued final regulations that provide guidance on deductions for foreign-derived intangible income, FDII, and global intangible low-taxed income allowed to domestic corporations under the Internal Revenue Code. So if you're interested in that, or if it applies to you, I will have the links for you in the comment section below. Also, the Treasury and the IRS provided guidance in Notice 2020-54 to employers requiring them to report the amount of the qualified sick and family leave wages that are paid to employees under the Families First Affliction Response Act. That's not the real name of the act, but you know that I can't necessarily use that word on this platform. That they have to report the amount of sick and family leave wages that are paid to employees under this act on Form W-2. And again, that's Notice 2020-54. This is important if you're going to advise your clients who are employers on their obligations there. But I'm sure some of you have opinions, maybe even analysis that you'd like to share on this issue, or maybe on any of the issues that I talked about. And please share those in the comments below. I like to keep the discussion going from the news, and the best way to do that is to engage in the comments on the platform. So that's the show for today. A short one, but I wanted to get something out today to cover those issues. As usual, if you liked it, please hit the like button, the thumbs up button, and share it on your other platforms. Facebook gives us the widest possible audience, but please share it on all of the on the platforms if you would, please. That would really help Get the word out. Also, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can be notified of future shows, especially if we do premiere shows that will allow you to take part in the live chat with both me and with others who are listening. Hope you have a really good weekend. Thanks for listening to Deep in the Heart of Taxes. I'm Jack Manhire, wishing you many happy returns.